Hello, good afternoon, welcome back to Premier League Dad. It's the Game Week 20 prediction show where I'll be giving my take on what looks like a massive set of fixtures coming up in the Premier League this weekend. So first up, Tottenham against Newcastle, and this is the early kickoff on Saturday, and again, I'm going to have to back goals galore. I have to back goals in this one. I was actually reading the other day that over the last few years, this particular fixture averages something like 4 or 5 goals a game. Spurs just can't keep clean sheets. You've got to afford Ange Postecoglou some sort of patience. I would hope anyway. I quite like Ange Postecoglou, and I would kind of hope that Spurs fans would afford him the fact that he's not got Vicario, he's not got Van de Ven, he's not got Romero, one of the best defenders in the Premier League, and Van de Ven's someone that allows them to push really high up the pitch because he's lightning. So they're having to change their entire system basically because they've got 3 really key players in their spine missing. I feel really sorry for Spurs. They're due a break. I don't know if they're going to get it this weekend. This is a really bad time to play Newcastle. They played really well in midweek against United. I don't think they had to play all that well to beat Man United, I've got to say. So you've got to say, looking at it, I think Newcastle will fancy their chances coming here. He's playing like a player possessed, a striker possessed, scoring goals, linking play up well. Spurs will do really well to keep him out this weekend. I think from Spurs' point of view, can threaten, they've got pace in attack. I think Kulusevski's a really, really underrated player. I still think Spurs can cause Newcastle problems, but I expect Newcastle to get the job done. I think Spurs are 11th in the table. They're not miles off the European positions. If they get a couple of wins together, get into a bit of a rhythm, maybe that happens when they get some players back. Hopefully they stick with Ange for that time. Newcastle, on the other hand, are 3 points off Chelsea. They're sitting in 5th. They're 3 points off Chelsea in 4th. They could get back into those Champions League positions by the end of the season. I've got to say, based on current form, I really fancy them to. I think if Newcastle want to be considered as a Champions League team again, which they were not that long ago, and they want to get back to that, playing those big European nights at St James's Park, I think they've got to win this one. They've got to go to Spurs and lay down a marker, and I fully expect them to. I think this is going to be quite a close one. Both teams to score for sure, and I would go 2-1. 2-1 Newcastle. So next up, let's take a look at Bournemouth against Everton. Now, Bournemouth are unbeaten in 7. Sean Dyche has to get a result here. I think it can be a draw, but it has to be a game where Everton pursue the opposition. It's a really tough game to call, this one, because it very much will depend on how Sean Dyche sets the team up. Now, he may view going down to Bournemouth and getting a point in the grand scheme of things as a win, because Bournemouth are where they are. They're on the cusp of the European places. Everton are where they are again on the cusp of the relegation places. So you would have to say, if Everton go to Bournemouth and get a point, it's not a bad result. But if they go to Bournemouth and they put in what some Everton fans would call a Sean Dyche performance, where they afford Bournemouth lots of the ball, they don't really dominate Bournemouth as Everton fans might think they should, and they sit off quite a bit. I think if that's the sort of game we see, then Everton probably will get a point. I think when Dyche sets the team up, he's one of the best around at setting a team up to be stubborn, to limit opportunities, to defend deep, and he's got players like Tarkowski and Branthwaite that are experienced at playing in that style. If he tries to go and get Bournemouth, if he tries to take the game to Bournemouth, I think Bournemouth pick them off. They've got players built for the counter-attack, players like Semenyo, Kluivert, Ouattara, who scored off the bench against Fulham, and then they've got really clever players as well. The likes of Brooks, Ryan Christie. They've got players that can really hurt you on the counter-attack, that are really smart. I've said for a while that I wasn't entirely sure on Evan Ilson. I think he's still got some developing to do to be a proper Premier League striker. But he scored at the weekend. He's starting to look a little bit better recently. So I'm going to go a point. I'm going to sit on the fence. I'm going to go 1-1. I fancy Everton to... If that is how it plays out, I think Everton score first from a set piece and then Bournemouth equalise late on. If it's 0-0, and Bournemouth score first, I think Bournemouth win 2-3-0. I think Bournemouth run away with it. Could be wrong, we'll see. It's a really tough one to call, that one, but I'm going to stick with what I said originally. I'm going to go with a point, 1-1. So next up, Aston Villa taking on Leicester City. Can't see anything other than a home win here. Leicester are 4 defeats on the run, and I've got to say the performances haven't really given me much encouragement under Ruud van Nistelrooy. I don't think they've improved all that much under him. They desperately need some bodies in January to change things up. They need something. Otherwise, they are almost certainly going down, for me anyway. Aston Villa haven't looked themselves either in the last few weeks, I've got to say. The defeat at Forest, the defeat up at Newcastle. They didn't quite get over the line against Brighton either. Even the City game at home, where they very nearly threw that away at the end. And I feel like Villa are so up and down this season. I'm not quite sure what's going on with Unai Emery. Again, do they need an extra body or two in January? I'm not quite sure. They're still flying in Europe, of course. They're still doing really well in Europe. But when it comes back to the Premier League, it just feels like they've lost something. They've lost a little bit of an edge. I'm not quite sure why that is. Why do you think it is? Let me know. It'd be interesting to see what other people think about that. But Aston Villa definitely have too much in the tank for Leicester for this one, I'm afraid. I think it's going to be a stroll. I actually think Leicester score early. I think Ollie Watkins is the one bright spark in this Villa side at the moment, with John Duran out, suspended. I'm not sure if he's still suspended for this one. I think he's back for this one, isn't he? So actually that'll be interesting. Does Unai Emery put John Duran back in, or does he stay with Ollie Watkins, who's now scoring again? It feels like he's got to stick with Ollie Watkins, but both of those have a point to prove, don't they? And John Duran, when you leave him out the side, he comes off the bench, he scores. And they've got this exact same problem with Ollie Watkins now. Duran got suspended, Ollie Watkins comes in, starts scoring and assisting for fun. So next up, let's take a look at Crystal Palace against Chelsea. Boy, do Chelsea need a win. Chelsea desperately need a win, don't they? They've got Newcastle bang on their tails for those Champions League positions now, and they cannot afford to start dropping points so easily. If they're not careful, this title charge that we was all talking about just a few weeks ago is very quickly just going to disintegrate, and they'll end up back outside the European spots, because it can happen so quickly. Selhurst Park's such a dangerous place to go. Ismaila Sarr's banging form. I thought Eze had a terrific game at the weekend against Southampton. This is one of them where my heart might rule my head, because everything here is telling me that Crystal Palace are going to pinch a point. And while that wouldn't be surprising, something's just telling me that this is where Chelsea's barren, torrid run over Christmas and New Year, this is where it ends, and they pick up a win again. Because against Ipswich, they were poor against Ipswich, but they made really big key errors in key moments, and the disaster from Axel Disasi at the back, that ruins the game for Chelsea. They go from chasing the game at 1-0 to 2-0 down, and all of a sudden they've got a mountain to climb. And they created plenty of chances against Ipswich. Cole Palmer hits the bar a couple of times. Christian Walton in goals got to pull off a couple of worldy saves. I think Chelsea get the job done here. It's going to be a tight one again, but I'm going to go 3-1. I'm going to go 3-1 Chelsea. I think they get it done in the end. So next up, Manchester City at home to West Ham. This is another 3 o'clock on Saturday. And again, I can't see past the City win. I don't think they were particularly good against Leicester. I just think City, again, scored in crucial moments. Erling Haaland getting that second was a big one, just as Leicester were sort of getting themselves back into the game. Either way, a win's a win, right? And Pep Guardiola will just be delighted to get that 3 points, to get a rhythm again, to get them feeling like they can win, because their confidence has just been through the floor for weeks, months now. And I think they'll see a very accommodating West Ham at the Etihad. West Ham, of course, off the back of a 5-0 defeat to Liverpool, they'll see this one as another sort of free hit. Lopetegui will be telling them, look, everyone's expecting you to lose here, guys. Everyone's expecting you to come here, and City are going to win. West Ham just looks so poor at the back. They look just porous, really porous at the back. And you can't have Foden, Haaland, Bernardo Silva, even Savinho, Doku, whoever it might be, whoever he puts up there. You can't have those buzzing around you at the back for so long and it not lead to goals. So again, I think we're talking about a City performance that doesn't blow West Ham away, maybe as Liverpool did. I think we're talking about a City performance that just gets the job done, the same as they did against Leicester. I think West Ham have moments in the game. Might even get a goal, they might even go ahead, who knows, but I still think City get the job done. So I'm going to go 2-0. I'm going to go 2-0 City, a relatively comfortable one. So next up, Southampton against Brentford. Another Saturday 3 o'clock kickoff. Brentford will be wanting to end their winless run on the road. I think they've drawn 2 and lost 7 so far. But this is the game, I think, where they get their first away win. For Southampton, they've brought Ivan Juric in, a manager who, his time at Torino, had a reputation for clean sheets, for good, solid defences, and it does feel like Southampton have been a little bit more solid, not incredibly solid, but a little bit more solid in the last 2 against West Ham and against Crystal Palace. They've only conceded 3 goals, which is an improvement on the last 2 before that. So I still think that Southampton are a team that are destined to go down, unfortunately. They've got a couple of players that could hurt Brentford. Tyler Diblin has shone for Southampton this season. And again, you'd have to say he's one that will be plucked from Southampton in the summer. If they do go down, you'd have to say he's a Premier League player next term. A really, really talented youngster. So, they can cause Brentford problems. I actually think what Juric will be focusing on more with this Southampton team is the other end of the pitch. I think he'll be saying to them, let's start to get some clean sheets. Let's just start to focus on clean sheets. If it's 0-0 today, it's okay. They very nearly got a 0-0 against West Ham. And he is a manager that prides himself on clean sheets, on being very, very difficult to score against. I just think they desperately need an attacker in January. I think they need someone that can bring them goals and some sort of Premier League experience. They need something. They need something else in January if they've got any hope of staying up. I do fancy Brentford to get an away win here. I think Brian and Burmo will score, and Brentford will just have a little bit too much for Southampton on the day. 2-1. Next up, a massive one at the Amex, 5:30 on Saturday. This is the evening game. It's Brighton against Arsenal. Arsenal need to win. The pressure is all on the Gunners. If they've got any hope of staying in this title race, they've got to start picking up these wins. They're 6 points behind Liverpool, effectively 7 if you consider the goal difference a point. And Liverpool have a game in hand. So Arsenal have to go into this one thinking that anything other than a win is just not good enough. Brighton aren't going to make it easy. They're winless in 7, so they're in a really, really tough patch at the moment under Fabian Hürzeler. But they've only lost once at home all season, which was the other day, actually, against Crystal Palace. I think Brighton at the Amex are just a different proposition. This is going to be one where Arsenal are really going to be tested. Arsenal are winning. They won at Brentford the other night, but I don't feel like they're blowing teams away. They played Ipswich and eventually beat them, of course. Again, they didn't blow Ipswich away, and Ipswich at home is one where you would look at and say, that's going to be one where they win 3-4-5-0. But they just didn't quite look as confident as many expected them to. Then they go away to Brentford, and Brentford go ahead, and it just looks a little bit disjointed at times in attack. So I think Brighton will frustrate Arsenal this weekend, and I think it'll be a draw. I'm calling it. I'm going to go Desmond again. I had good success with 2-2s last weekend. I'm going to go 2-2. Brighton 2, Arsenal 2. Calling it now. You heard it here first. Okay, on to Sunday's fixtures. Fulham against Ipswich. And again, this is another one that's quite hard to call. Fulham played really well against Bournemouth, I thought, and it was only that late goal from Dango Ouattara that saw them drop points in the end. And they'd come into this one, I think, expecting a win, wouldn't they? Ipswich are just obviously beat Chelsea, so they'll be feeling confident, but Ipswich away from home on the road haven't been great, and if you're Fulham and you want that European spot, they are still just a couple of points off a European place. Marco Silva will be eyeing games like this and saying, we have to win. So it'll be a real test for Fulham, be a real test for them. For Ipswich, they've shown they can win on the road, haven't they? Beating Spurs was a big moment for them, and I think They probably do have it in them to nick a point, but I don't expect them to. Ipswich, if they win, can actually get out of the relegation zone, which will be a huge moment for them, won't it? Because it'll give them even more confidence, especially after the Chelsea result, that they can kick on, they can be a Premier League side. So a win would be massive for Ipswich here. Even a point probably wouldn't be the worst result, looking at where the teams are in the table, respectively. But I just think Fulham get this done in the end. I think they're just too strong for Ipswich in the end, and I think we'll see that play out. So I'll go 2-0. 2-0 Fulham. Now the big 4:30 game on Sunday, Liverpool against Manchester United at Anfield. Wow, what a game this is going to be. I feel like if you're a Man United fan, you want any other game than this one right now. I feel like if you're Ruben Amorim, this is exactly the sort of game you do want. When Man United have struggled the most this season, it's been when they've had lots of pressure and there's been an expectation of winning. You know, Anfield can be a really unforgiving place. Gary Neville talked about it recently on Sky Sports, where he was saying that you have to run at Anfield. You have to run. If you've not got energy and legs in that midfield, you'll just get overrun. The game will pass you by and Liverpool will knock it around you, and that's it. And this Liverpool side are so clinical at the moment that it really won't take too many chances for them to be ahead. If Liverpool score first, I really fear for Man United. I do fear that we'll see a 4-5-6, maybe 7-0 again. Especially if Liverpool score in that first half. The longer it stays at 0-0, Ruben Amorim will grow in confidence. So I think that's what he'll be shooting for. I think what he'll be talking about to his team is what pretty much every other manager talks about coming to Anfield, is keep it tight. Let's just keep it tight, calm the crowd down. Try to play the team, not the occasion. I mean, the team's world class too, so that doesn't necessarily help them either. They really have to keep things tight, and I'm not sure how they're going to do it in this 5-4-1, 5-3-2 type system that Amorim's playing, because he hasn't got the width, he hasn't got the fullbacks or the energy to keep the pitch wide enough for them. He just hasn't, and he hasn't got the legs in midfield. If he puts Casemiro and Eriksen in there, I really worry for him. You know, this Liverpool side are strolling to the title. Mo Salah is in the form of his life. Ryan Gravenberch, who just looks the player of the season for me so far. Virgil van Dijk back to his imperious best. Trent Alexander-Arnold knocking it to feet from 60 yards while he's looking for houses in Madrid. I just don't think this Man United side are showing enough ambition going forward that they can hurt Liverpool. And equally at the back, they just look totally disorganised. So yeah, I have been wrong on Liverpool v Man United games before. I tend to be a bit glass half empty with them. But the gap between the two teams on the pitch right now is just gargantuan. It's as big as it's ever been. I just can't see anything other than a Liverpool win on this one. I think it might be a bad one as well. I'm going to go 4-0. And that's based purely off the fact that I don't think Man United stopped Liverpool scoring in the first half. And I think Liverpool score first. That's the important thing. I can't see a world where it's 0-0 at half-time. Because once Liverpool score first, that is when they are at the absolute most dangerous. Because we'll just leave Szoboszlai, Salah, Gakpo on the halfway line. As soon as United start pushing bodies forward to try and come out, we'll just hit them on the counter-attack and it'll kill it off. So yeah, to any Man United fans watching, sorry not sorry. Finally, the Monday night football game, Wolves against Nottingham Forest. Another really important game. Wolves unbeaten under new manager Vitor Pereira, and Nottingham Forest have 6 wins out of their last 7. You've got to say, there's some really impressive victories in amongst those as well. They've gone to Goodison Park. They've gone to Old Trafford and won. They beat Villa. They beat Tottenham at home. They are 3rd in the table, 5 points clear of Newcastle, 6 points clear of Manchester City. And yet still nobody's taking them really seriously for those Champions League places. You've got to say, if you're a Forest fan, you'll be delighted about that, because the longer you can fly under the radar, the better. You know, the pundits just keep writing them off, and it's doing Nuno Espirito Santo's job for him, isn't it? You know, all he has to do is come into the dressing room and say, "Here, lads, look what they're saying. They're saying they don't think you're good enough. They don't think you're good enough out there." Every single one of those players gets a lift, don't they? I mean, you look at players like Elanga, specifically, who clearly left Man United with a point to prove. Hudson-Odoi was bombed out of Chelsea. Chris Wood didn't really get much of a chance at Newcastle. Nor did Elliot Anderson. Nico Williams didn't get a huge chance at Liverpool either. Ola Aina, who's been one of the best fullbacks in the league this season, he got let go from Chelsea at a young age. You know, even in goal, the ever-reliable Matt Sells was let go from Newcastle back in the day. It didn't work out for him there. So you've got a team of players who already have a point to prove, and then you've got a load of outsiders telling them that they're not quite good enough to make it anyway. It's just a recipe for Nottingham Forest making a Champions League place. And if they did, it would be one of the Premier League's all-time great stories. You know, not quite up there with Leicester winning the league, but certainly on the way to that level. You know, and they'll go to Wolves brimming with confidence that they can get a win and stay in amongst it and stay ahead of the chasing pack. You know, from Wolves' point of view, they went away to Leicester and got a big win. They were comfortable against Man United, I thought, and then they've gone to Spurs and showed their resilience to get a point away at a really tough away ground. I'd say this game is probably the game of the game week. I actually think this one is one where it could go either way. It really could. It wouldn't surprise me if Wolves got a result because they're flying under Pereira. They look at just a totally different proposition. So it's a really tough one to call. I might actually go with my old faithful from last weekend and go Desmond 2-2. I think that's what I'm going to do. We're going to go 2-2. Wolves 2, Nottingham Forest 2. And those are my predictions. Let me know in the comments if you think I got any dreadfully wrong. Let me know your predictions as well. I'd be really interested to hear them. And as always, thanks again for watching. I really appreciate it. If you like this sort of thing, if you like videos like this, if you like football, if you're a football dad like me, give us a like, give us a follow, give us a subscribe, all the good stuff. It's really appreciated. And yeah, thanks again for watching. I'll see you on the next one.